So we just got into the language. We're in the language. We're looking at things. We're making sense. There's so much to make association with. Like we've covered enough. It almost the individual question about what's in my chart was that's the first question we're going to have. That you should take some time and just work on over the next week or two, over the summer, and think about it, because over your lifetime you're going to be doing this and redoing this. So one second. I wouldn't, I'm sorry, I'm just looking around on the board here. Okay, so, okay, Marika, you have a question now? Let's see. What's my take on Chiron? Okay, good question. Chiron, it's, as soon as you get to the smaller planets, asteroids, Chiron, outer planets, they're going to be there. People are going to add them in their chart. They're going to have concepts that they're flying to and adding them in the chart. If you're going to add them in the chart, you have to be able to see them in each category for each sign. Rising, daylight great, increasing, nighttime increasing, daylight greater, nighttime greater. You got to go through cardinal, fixed, mutable, masculine, feminine. You got to see how it behaves in each one. And then in the houses, then you can see the aspects it makes. But still, it's often called the wounded healer, generally. But usually there's a crisis about healing wherever Chiron is. I don't put it in the chart. It's not one of the main factors. It's secondary factors, and it's not ones you need to make your big decisions on. You make the big decisions on the main factors. The other things are extra coloring that you may get to when you're in looking at a special situation. But so I'll put it in a chart, but I wouldn't use it to read to someone or to convince someone they have to be this way or that way. I don't think it's that strong. But Chiron, as the last of the centers, he got wounded, but he had eternal life, so he was always in pain, and he studied all the healing things to try and fix himself. So he became known as the healer because he helped everyone else solve their problems. He learned all the ways there were to heal, but he never healed himself. And in the end, he gave up his immortal life and chose to die rather than live in pain, eternal pain. So he's kind of the god of euthanasia almost, of not finding it. But I think there's a point in ourselves, whether it's from another lifetime or whatever, where there's we have a sensitive point where we have a vulnerability and we have to try and heal it, where there's been some crisis, whether it's last lifetime or whatever, where there's something that's happened that we're having to try and resolve or heal. But it's still a nerve that sits there. And I would take Chiron like that. But I wouldn't, right now, you got to get like if you're going to learn music, astrology is similar, you got to learn the scales. You got to learn to play your instrument. So you got to learn these basic things before you start trying to play with the symphony. As soon as you start trying to play with the symphony, you get undone and pulled out in all these directions, and the challenge is to maintain your own system anyways. So it's curious. Chiron's a factor in astrology these days, and many people read into it, but I think they read into it much more than usual. They often, we saw the workshop by Michael Luton. He did one of the nicest takes on Chiron that I've heard anybody do. He has that crisis point that's sitting there, and it's a nerve that's there, and we have to heal it. Or that we're trying to find solutions to it. Yeah, so basically, as a standard thing, when you're working, but before you got a 500 or 1,000 charts done, you're dissipating yourself and going out to watch mentally all these other things before you understand the main things and watch the main things working. So get the main things working first. You can add the other things in extra. Really, the best way to do a consultation is to do two. One on the natal chart and just spend the time on the different layers of consciousness and the yogis and the challenges of each planet and each layer of the person's chart. Take an hour or two doing that. Then take a second session to do the transits. And maybe a third to integrate the progressions. And you have 3 layers of explaining where someone would be that's integrated to their chart. That would be the best way to take on it, to do it. But we rarely have the time. We're usually jumping these together short. As soon as we cut corners, we get less valid advice or less qualified advice. So when you've done a lot of charts, you learn, you get a common sense that can cut through things a little faster than others. But there's the mythology of things isn't the same as the spiritual clear energy between how you're using it, not how it works, how it's not. So there's still, I don't use it in most charts that I do. I don't use it in a consultation. Occasionally, if there's a major crisis or something's coming up, I may take a look at where it is just to see if it's active on something. But that's about it. So I hope that's a little helpful. It's not, yeah, so there's so much to do and to figure out. You get the main structure, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, and then going out. You get that main structure and you get it real, so it's your spine, it's your way of perceiving it. Then when you add other things in, you can add other things in and see how they fit in perspective. But if you add them in before you've got the main core solid, it distorts your perspective and takes away some of the healing power of your advice or of your insight. So there's I have to decide, like right now we've had a small group. I don't know if everybody wants to continue. The next level would be the planets and the signs, going through each planet, through each category. It's, in one way, it was the classes I avoided teaching for a lot of years, but in another way, it was the most rewarding classes. It's going through each thing, making associations like we are here. Really, you're just stretching how you know a planet and how a planet reacts to the signs. Then when the next class is planets in the houses, and you're looking at how it puts the energy there. Then there's another class where we do the planets and the aspects, and we do one planet at a time. And we work through all the possibilities, and kind of like we did here, only a little deeper, or a little more thorough. But I think I'm going to wait at least a month. Somewhere over the summer, please let me know if you want to go on to the next level and have another webinar on the next level. And as soon as, if I find everybody wants to go ahead, then I can put the notice out and try and see if a few other people want to join us and see if it's worth doing. And we'll know, if we do that, we'll try and set it up for the fall sometime. I'd like to do it. It's just I'm changing my formats. I'm teaching a little differently. I've grown a little in how I'm teaching, so I wouldn't mind getting the webinar videos on the each of the level, on the next levels of class. I wouldn't mind going through the whole thing, but we got to pull a few more people in. So there, I got my group of people to send notices out to. I'm just going to sleep on it for a couple of weeks. Sometime in August, I'll make the decision. I'll send out a notice and see if anyone's interested. If we got enough people to go, we'll go ahead with it. So. Please let me know, send me an email as to whether you want to keep going or not. We can keep it on a Wednesday night through the fall and go on like that, but I need somewhere in August I got to make the decision to go towards it or not. So that's sitting there. Anything else? Oh yeah, one little thing I wanted to talk about. I just had it here. I just pulled it up. About aspects. We didn't really go into calculating aspects that much. Whoops. And oh, 1 second. I got to pull up another thing here. Blank form. Okay, I'm just going to get handouts. I'm just going to put a handout here for the aspect form. Not that you're going to calculate. Aspects was always the tedious part of calculating a chart. However, once you've done it once or twice, it really helps you to visualize your chart and be able to see aspects quickly and be able to calculate them in your head. So this is just a sample chart. Person has their sun in Scorpio, the moon's in Libra, planets are all around. The main point I want to get to, just a quick thing, this is an aspect calculation form where you can put the aspect between each two planets in. What you do to start with, you see each planet has its position, which really is the number of degrees from the beginning of the sign up to that position. So in this case for the sun is at 16 degrees, sorry, oops, get this up here. The sun here is at 16 degrees 27 minutes. So when I go to the calculation sheet, I write down 16:27 minutes, and right beside it, I calculate how many minutes and seconds to the end of the sign. So I subtract it from 30 degrees. So in this case, it comes to 13:33, 13 degrees 33 minutes to the end of the sign. Okay, so I do this for each planet. You have the position, and you have the how many degrees up to the position it's in, and how many degrees to the end of the sign. Once you have this, aspects are easy. Because you look at any planet, if I want to see the position of the sun, well, in this case, the sun to Neptune would be in the same sign. I would just subtract them and I'd get the distance. But here, Mercury's over in Sag. The sun's at 16 degrees 27 minutes of Scorpio. And I would simply, I'm going to take the sun up to the end of Scorpio and the beginning of Sag up to Mercury. So the sun to the end of Scorpio was 13:33, and Mercury is at 2:45, and I would add those together, and it would be 16 degrees 18 minutes. So the aspect between Sun and Mercury would be 16 degrees 18 minutes. I know I don't expect you to follow it. I'm just gonna, maybe I'll add these two to this chart so you can just see but it's a fairly simple thing. So if you're going across signs, if you look at the moon, say you want to see where the moon is to Saturn, you're going to take the moon, which is at 1 degree 38. It's 28 degrees and 28 minutes to the sun, to the end of the sign. So any planet, you're going to go you're either going to go to the end of the sign and then up to the other planet, and one planet you're going to use the actual position. So in this case, looking at the moon and Saturn, you'll see we'll have to go from the moon to the end of the Libra, which would be the moon is 22 degrees. Then we add 30 degrees for Scorpio, 30 degrees for Sag, 30 degrees for Capricorn, 30 degrees for Aquarius. There's 120 degrees added to the 28, so 148.22 from the moon to the end of Aquarius. Then we add Saturn to it. We just add the Saturn 23, so we're at 128, no, 120 and 28, 148, and we're going to add Saturn is 23, 148, 168, 171. So it's in opposition. Saturn is 171 degrees away from the moon. So we had to calculate from the moon to the end of the sign, add 30 degrees for each sign, and then the actual position of the planet. If we were going the other way, we're doing Saturn to Mars, we would have to use Saturn to the end of the sign, which would be about 7 degrees. You can do this approximate, about 7, 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. So there's 150 for the signs in between. So there's 157, and then you add 16 for Mars. You add the 60 degrees for Mars. So always using one planet, it's at its position, and you're adding to the end of you use its position, and you're looking before that for 30 degrees for each sign, and you take the other planet and you're using its position to the end of the sign, and you add those up. That gives you the aspects. We get them calculated by computers now, so you don't have to do this. But when you're looking at a chart, and there's like usually they're even calculated for you, but if you have the information, it's useful to be able to think like this. Because where's the moon? Oh, the moon's at this degree. You can look at where the moon sign is now, and you can calculate what degree might be there. It's just from, I grew up out of the generation that always calculated charts. By the time computers came along, I'd already hand calculated maybe 5,000 or 10,000 charts. And so this was inherent in me, thinking like this. But when you look at a chart, you're just looking at a chart, you don't have all the other aspectarians or other things, you're looking at it, you use the planet, and you have to decide whether you're using the planet's position or the distance to the end of the sign, which number you're going to use, which degrees are you going to use, and then you just add the signs in between, and you'll get the aspect.